I was born in the 50s. When I was young, there were no shelters for women, battered women as they called it then. There were no shelters. If you call the police and bully on you, they'd come talk to you and patronize you and ask you what you did wrong to get him all upset. There was no justice. There were no programs. There was no help. There was no domestic violence awareness month. Was no understanding of the power and control wheel developed by Ellen Pence, the Duluth, Minnesota project. There was no funding. In fact, when finally, after much effort by volunteers, rich women usually, who went to Washington, I have actually met some of these women, lobbying for change and for programs to help battered women because back then the focus was on the women. They went to Washington repeatedly, and by the early 90s, Bill Clinton, Joe Biden, and some others came up with VAWA, Violence Against Women Act, which funds the programs even to this day and has saved so many thousands of lives. Thousands of lives because the focus was on women, but domestic violence kills males and females. It affects males and females. It affects people. When you have 4 children in a shelter because of domestic violence, on average, it's 2 females and 2 males. They're all affected. And when they grow up, they do the same thing. They become, about a quarter of them become victims, about a quarter become victimizers. And that's both males and females. You're creating another generation. Females are not as violent and dangerous physically, but they make up for it many other ways psychologically. In addition, many of the victims, there are 4 or 5 victims a day who are homicide victims, domestic violence homicide victims, every day in the United States alone and more in other countries. Out of the 4 or 5, 1 is a male. So you see, the generation that came through those shelters and programs or else experienced domestic violence go out and repeat to a large extent, not always. It's a generational cycle. Learn behavior. So, this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. The biggest thing to take away is to become aware of how dangerous a toxic relationship becomes because in the beginning, it's all flowers and roses and doors opening and restaurants and, oh, he thinks I'm so beautiful or she thinks I'm so great. But after a while, when they get comfortable in their roles, you begin to see that the mask slipped and you've married or become acquainted too closely with the monster. And if you have children with this person, then you are stuck with them for a very long time. Sometimes they end your lives, and sometimes not. They just make you miserable for a very long time. So, the best thing that we can learn from domestic violence awareness is to see the red flags and don't collect the red flags. Use the red flags. Escape safely when you have to. If you have an extremely obsessed person who sends you 50 texts a minute, that's a dangerous person. Major red flag. Use everything available to escape these toxic relationships and to get counseling for your children and for yourself so that this habit, this behavior rather, of picking bad toxic relationships is not repeated. Repeating it, the cyclical damage is what keeps it going.